Wilt Chamberlain, one of the most dominant players in all of sports. So dominant that some of his physical feats are so unbelievable that they sound like myths made up by older fans who try to make their era sound way better than what it may have actually been. But then you see some clips here and there, some highlights of Wilt Chamberlain in his prime, and it's literally unbelievable. This is a man who scored 100 points in one game, averaged 50 points for an entire season, a ridiculous rebounder, an unbelievable athlete, and a player who has statistical feats that are so out of reach that you probably couldn't even accomplish them if you were playing 2K. And even though Wilt Chamberlain came across as this godlike creature, he was still a man. And as a man, that means that he has a weakness. And that one weakness was his free throws. And so once I really wrapped my mind on how bad of a free throw shooter Wilt was, I thought to myself, what if he was actually a good free throw shooter? But before we get into the video, I have to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, and that is SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a great app that allows users to find the best pricings to whatever event they plan to attend. Regardless if it's a comedy or a concert, or I'm pretty sure you all want to watch some basketball games, SeatGeek will always have your back and they'll always have the best pricings out there. And no cap, no flex, no boost, I just used a SeatGeek app last year when the Cavs came to town to play the Atlanta Hawks. It was a great game. I'm happy I used SeatGeek, and I was able to find some really good seats that were about 7 to 8 rows from the court that were a third of the regular price, like literally a fraction of how much I was supposed to pay. So SeatGeek will always have your back, and it is extremely easy to use due to the rating system, as they color coordinate the better pricing for the tickets. And if all that still isn't enough for you, SeatGeek has allowed me to give you all a special offer by using my promo code. All you have to do is type in LOW to get $20 off on your first order. All of the information will be at the top of the description box, so make sure at the end of the video you click on that link and make sure you get your tickets that we all know that you really and truly want deep down inside. And also, again, huge shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. Now, when researching this video, easily the most interesting information that I've found is that no one has really talked about this. Despite the fact that he is easily the worst free throw shooter out of any volume scorer that the league has ever seen. Literally, if you were to go back throughout NBA history and look at any player who has averaged 20 points or more, the players at the bottom of the free throw list are going to be Walt Bellamy, Shaquille O'Neal, and Wilt Chamberlain with 51% from the free throw line. As a matter of fact, you could even lower the bar to only 15 points per game and Wilt Chamberlain would still be at the bottom. Wilt Chamberlain was such a poor free throw shooter that many people believe that the hack-a-Shaq strategy that people believe originated with Shaquille O'Neal actually originated with Wilt Chamberlain, as people would purposely foul Wilt Chamberlain to put him on a free throw line because Wilt Chamberlain shot worse from an uncontested shot than a contested fadeaway out of the post. Wilt Chamberlain was such a bad free throw shooter that he changed his mechanics on a year-to-year basis. Wilt Chamberlain is such a bad free throw shooter that some people have claimed that he used to practice jumping from behind the free throw line to attempt a dunk or a layup to avoid shooting free throws, which is ridiculous. So ridiculous that once people in the NCAA heard that Wilt Chamberlain was planning on doing this, besides actually shooting free throws, they set a rule in place to make sure he wasn't able to do so. And then a few years later, the NBA adopted those same rules. So ridiculous that I'm surprised that this isn't a consistent talking point about Wilt Chamberlain and his career. I mean, when it comes to a player such as Shaquille O'Neal, pretty frequently people criticize him on his poor percentages from the free throw line, to the point where many people have made videos about him making his free throws. But those same people have failed to realize that Wilt Chamberlain and his impact historically could significantly change if he could make his free throws. I mean, we are talking about a man who scored 100 points in a game, averaged 50 points for an entire season, and historically has more total career points than Shaquille O'Neal. And again, he actually shot worse from the free throw line. So that begs the question, what would happen to Wilt Chamberlain and his numbers if he was just an average free throw shooter? Now, when making this video, I decided not to use today's standards. Actually, I didn't even use the standards of the 2000s or the 90s. I went all the way back to the 60s and found the most average free throw shooter I could find. And not only did I do that, I excluded all of the guards and the small forwards. So we're looking at the average free throw shooter who is a power forward or center. And that player is Bob Ferry, who shot 66.4% from the free throw line throughout his entire career. That is a pretty significant jump from the 51% that Wilt Chamberlain has claimed, so we should see some pretty significant changes throughout Wilt Chamberlain's career. So throughout his entire career, if Wilt Chamberlain was an average free throw shooter, he would have gained 1,819 career points. To put that in context, just last year, DeMar DeRozan, one of the players that is viewed as one of the better scorers in the NBA, recorded 1,840 points. So yeah, that's a pretty significant jump. What exactly does that do to his career total points? It actually jumps him up to 33,238 total points, which will place him 4th overall. But what's even more impressive is what would be his career average. As before, it was 30.1 points per game, which was tied for second with Michael Jordan. But if Wilt Chamberlain was an average free throw shooter, it would jump up to 31.8 points per game. To put that in context, the last 25 players who've led the NBA in scoring, only 3 of them have been able to eclipse 31.8 points per game. That's Kevin Durant in 2014, Kobe Bryant in 2006, and Michael Jordan in 1993. But we're not going to stop there. If we go to the historic 1962 season, where Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points per game and made him just an average free throw shooter, Wilt Chamberlain in that one season will record 4,099 points, and in that season averaging 51.2 points per game. But what's even more egregious and crazy, and something that I completely didn't even know myself, is the numbers that Wilt Chamberlain was posting up in the postseason, as Wilt Chamberlain shot an abysmal 46.5% from the free throw line. Now, when it comes to free throw percentage, I know for a fact it's going to dip a little bit, but going from 51 to 46 is pretty significant. But since I am aware if he was an average free throw shooter that he would no longer be shooting 66% from the free throw line like he did in the regular season, let's bump it down to 63.4%. His total postseason points will come out to be 3,881, and he would end his career averaging 24.3 points per game in the postseason. The only reason why these numbers aren't significantly higher is simply because back in the 50s and 60s and even in the 70s, the path to the NBA Finals was significantly shorter than it is in today's game due to the fact that there were fewer teams in the NBA. Now, for the people out there who are wondering about the 100-point game, unfortunate for all of us, Wilt Chamberlain actually shot well from the free throw line that game, so we don't have to worry about adjusting his free throw percentage. But I have something that may be just a little bit better. In 1961, Wilt Chamberlain matched up against the Los Angeles Lakers as he was still playing with the Philadelphia Warriors. In this game, he recorded 78 points. The best part about it for us is that he actually shot 51.6% from the free throw line on 31 attempts. This game marks the 3rd most points scored in a single outing in NBA history, right behind Kobe Bryant's 81-point performance. However, if Wilt Chamberlain was just an average free throw shooter, he would actually eclipse Kobe's 81 with an 82-point performance. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this video feels a little bit incomplete. I mean, why exactly am I talking about being average for Wilt Chamberlain? Wilt Chamberlain is historic, he's amazing, he's dominating. So why would we use just an average free throw percentage? Why not give Wilt Chamberlain, the most dominant player of his era, the best free throw percentage of his era amongst big men? So with that thought process, I went back to the list where I found Bob Ferry's average free throw percentage, went all the way at the top of that list and found a Hall of Famer, 12-time All-Star, 12-time All-NBA player, NBA champion, Dolph Schayes, who shot a career average 84.9% from the free throw line. However, Wilt Chamberlain, he's supposed to dominate and be better than that, so I'm going to give him an even 85% from the free throw line. So if Wilt Chamberlain was not only dominant in scoring on the boards, protecting the rim, but was also dominant from the charity line and shot 85%, Wilt Chamberlain would have added 4,025 points to his career total, which would have brought him up to 35,444 points, which would have put him third in an exclusive 35,000 club with Karl Malone and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Let me explain to you how unbelievable that would have been. Wilt Chamberlain would have been able to accomplish the 35,444 points with a little over 1,000 games to his name. When it comes to Karl Malone and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it took them nearly 1,300 games to accomplish a similar feat. If Wilt Chamberlain was an elite level free throw shooter, he would have ended his career averaging 33.9 points per game, nearly eclipsing 95% of the players who have led the NBA in scoring on a year-to-year basis. And going back to the historic season where Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points per game, if Wilt Chamberlain was an elite level free throw shooter, shooting 85% from the free throw line, Wilt Chamberlain would have finished that season averaging 54.4 points per game and recorded 4,352 points that entire season. To put that into context, if you take the two players who've led the NBA in scoring over the last 2 seasons, in Russell Westbrook and James Harden, and added together the total amount of points that they scored to lead the NBA together, it's only a few hundred off from what Wilt Chamberlain could have recorded in one season. So what did we learn today? Wilt Chamberlain, extremely dominant, but had a massive flaw in his game, which were free throws. So significant of a flaw, if you were to compare him to just an average free throw shooter, you would find out that he left nearly 2,000 points on the free throw line throughout his entire career. And if you compare him to an elite level free throw shooter, you will find out that he left 4,000 points on the free throw line. And also, if you are practicing a free throw mechanic that involves you jumping from behind the free throw line to attempt a dunk, make sure nobody sees you doing that, because that is so cheese, it is unbelievable. But if you enjoy videos like this, please let me know in the comment section below. Leave a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more great content. Again, a huge shout out goes to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. I definitely cannot make videos like this without sponsors, so make sure you click the link in the description. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.
I went to a psychiatrist, and for about a month on my free throw situation. After I came out of it for a whole month, the psychiatrist was a better free throw shooter than I was.